You might think that after Donald Trump's meltdown at the United Nations, he would have gotten the attacks on world leaders out of his system, but clearly, that's not the case. It wasn't enough for him to stand before so many heads of state and claim their countries were falling apart. He feels the need to keep escalating, and today we saw that again in his exchange with President Erdogan of Turkey, an Oval Office moment that can only be described as a complete collapse. We're going to break down everything that happened, including who else Trump decided to go after. But before we dive in, if you're enjoying this content, please take a second to hit the like button, and if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. It really helps us keep going and continue this work. Now, before we get into Trump's remarks about the president of Turkey, let's start with the domestic meltdown he had, going after the so-called radical left in response to the tragic shooting that took place in Dallas yesterday.
There was another shooting at an ICE facility in Texas yesterday.
Terrible.
Detainees were killed. The FBI director posted on social media bullets that were engraved with the message anti-ICE.
Right.
He just posted another thing on social media saying they recovered a handwritten note from the subject that read, "Hopefully this will give ICE agents real terror to think, is there a sniper with AP rounds on that roof?" Who do you hold responsible for the uptick in left-wing violence in the country?
Radical left rhetoric. The radical left is causing the problem. They're out of control. They're saying things, and they're really dumb people. I mean, I look at Crockett. I look at some of these people. They're very low IQ people, actually. But the radical left is causing this problem, not the right, the radical left. And it's going to get worse, and ultimately it's going to go back on them. I mean, bad things happen when they play these games. And I'll give you a little clue. The right is a lot tougher than the left. But the right's not doing this. They're not doing it, and they better not get them energized, because it won't be good for the left. And I don't want to see that happen either. I'm the president of all the people. But the radical left is causing this. The radical left Democrats are causing this problem, and it gets worse. It gets worse, and it'll be a point where other people won't take it anymore, and that will not be good for the radical left, and we don't want that. Okay, thank you.
Now, I don't want to sound like I'm floating wild theories, but at this point, questioning the actions of Kash Patel's FBI and Pam Bandy DOJ isn't reckless. It's journalism. These institutions don't inspire trust anymore. And it's not just about politics. It's about the lack of credibility in how they operate. Take Kash Patel, for example. He posted a photo of bullets marked with anti-ICE, a phrase that doesn't even align with what activists or critics of ICE typically say. To me, that raises questions. Until a court confirms it or an investigation concludes, I think it's fair to remain skeptical. After all, the last time Patel rushed to post before an investigation wrapped, he ended up retracting his words. So when I see a conveniently timed photo that happens to fit the narrative being pushed by Patel, J.D. Vance, and Donald Trump, I'm not inclined to take it at face value. Especially since in this case, no law enforcement officers were harmed. The only life lost was that of a detainee, yet you don't see flags at half-mast for them. That silence speaks volumes. But of course, Donald Trump used the moment to spin another story about political violence, and he didn't stop there. Right after, he went further, turning his attention to take shots at none other than President Putin, who was sitting right across from him.
But I'm very disappointed in Putin. And he's been fighting hard, he's been fighting long, and they lost millions, they lost like 1 million soldiers. And you know, with all of the heavy bombardment over the last 2 weeks, they've gained almost no land. Think of that. They've gained almost no land. And I'm not going to ever call anybody a paper tiger, but Russia spent millions and millions of dollars in bombs, missiles, ammunition, and lives, their lives, and they've gained virtually no land. I think it's time to stop. I really do.
I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I would be glad if this administration truly shifts its foreign policy in stronger support of Ukraine. That's what should have been happening all along. Ukraine is our ally, and supporting them is the right thing to do. So why did it take so long? A big part of the reason is that Donald Trump has consistently shown deference to authoritarian leaders who flatter him. And here's the key point. Trump's frustration isn't about the suffering of the Ukrainian people, nor is it about standing with our allies. What really seems to upset him is the lack of attention he gets from Vladimir Putin. It's less about policy and more about ego. That's why I hesitate to get too optimistic about this apparent shift toward Ukraine. Because what happens if Putin picks up the phone and offers Trump the flattery he craves? Would he flip back in an instant? That's the concern. This is a leader driven not by principle or strategy, but by personal feelings. And that's exactly why his recent comment about President Erdogan caught so many people by surprise.
Unfairly, as it turns out, rigged election, he knows about rigged elections better than anybody. But when I was in exile, we were still friends. That's always a good way to find out, test of friendship. But
Donald Trump insinuating that the president of Turkey, and this is well reported, is rigging his elections, is interfering in his elections to say, well, this guy knows about how to rig an election, is a crazy thing to do. That is insane. But he's right. Like, sometimes he's right. Like, I don't want to give Donald Trump credit, but like, my God, like, what a crazy thing to do. But this is the putting brains Trump. Donald Trump is at the point where he's just saying whatever pops into his head. And what makes it even more remarkable is the way he says it. Almost with a sense of admiration. He joked that a foreign leader knows how to rig elections and even quipped about taking notes or getting a PowerPoint presentation on the subject. He went as far as imagining asking the press to leave the room so he could get tips on rigging 2028. That kind of remark is startling because it plays right into the criticisms people like Gavin Newsom have made. Trump practically admitted it out loud. He said it as if it were casual banter, but in reality, it shows how off the rails he has become. Instead of focusing on real issues, he's resorting to bizarre comments and wild distractions, even dragging in references to James Comey, seemingly to deflect from the controversies and investigations still surrounding him.
we don't want that. Okay, thank you.
Mr. President, it seems like an indictment of James Comey is imminent. Would this be the first step in accountability for pushing the hoax of Russia, along with Barack Obama involved as well?
Well, I can't tell you what's going to happen because I don't know. You have very professional people headed up by the Attorney General and Todd Blanche and Lindsay Halligan, who's very smart, good lawyer, very good lawyer. They're going to make a determination. I'm not making that determination. I think I'd be allowed to get involved if I want, but I don't really choose to do so. I can only say that Comey's a bad person. He's a sick person. I think he's a sick guy, actually. He did terrible things at the FBI. And but I don't know. I have no idea what's going to happen. Thank you very much, everyone.
I think it's important to recognize that Donald Trump's renewed attacks on James Comey are, in many ways, an effort to shift attention. The timing is notable. We just saw a Democratic win in a special election, which now means Democrats have the votes and signatures on the petition from Representatives Thomas Massie and Ro Khanna to bring the Epstein files to the House floor for a vote. And suddenly, Trump is talking about James Comey and Letitia James. Of course, Donald Trump has a pattern of going after women of color, and that's part of what we're seeing here. But the timing makes it clear this is also about distraction. It's not just about Epstein, although that's what's top of mind for a lot of people. It's about pushing his broader political project. Trump usually chooses his opponents carefully, and going after James Comey is strategic because he knows liberals aren't eager to defend him. Still, the principle matters. Just as I'd stand up for someone's right to free speech, even if I don't personally agree with them, the same applies here. James Comey shouldn't face indictment based on flimsy charges or political grudges, and the truth is, Trump had to push people out of the way to make this indictment even possible. That's what we need to point out. And as Jen Psaki highlighted, it's worth calling out directly.
So, as I just alluded to, and you've probably all seen, MSNBC was the first to break the news today that the Trump administration is officially preparing to indict former FBI Director James Comey. Now, in just a second, as I just mentioned with Chris, I'm going to talk to Preet Bharara. He's standing by. He's a longtime friend of Comey's, and he also, of course, succeeded him as the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York. Now, to state the complete obvious, what we're all thinking, indicting the former director of the FBI in a transparent attempt to settle a political score is an absolutely brazen abuse of political power. It's also one that we kind of knew was coming. It doesn't make it any better, but we kind of knew it was coming. Because Trump has few political enemies he loathes more than James Comey. I mean, in some ways, his hatred of Comey, and I was thinking about this earlier, has always been a little ironic. I mean, given Comey's decision to reopen the investigation into Hillary Clinton's emails just weeks before the 2016 election, remember that? A development that pretty clearly had an impact on the outcome of that election. But that couldn't make up for the fact that just days into Trump's first term, Comey made it clear that he would not bow to Trump's demands for absolute loyalty. I mean, Comey repeatedly refused Trump's demand that he absolve Trump of any blame during the earliest days of the Russia investigation. And within months, Trump fired Comey specifically because of that investigation.
Regardless of recommendation, I was going to fire Comey, knowing there was no good time to do it. And in fact, when I decided to just do it, I said to myself, I said, you know, this Russia thing with Trump and Russia is a made-up story.
The man always says the quiet part out loud, which is sort of a theme of part of what we're going to talk about tonight. Now, the next year, the New York Times reported that Trump actually tried to order his Justice Department to prosecute.
We all know the direction Donald Trump is trying to take things, and it's part of a broader authoritarian playbook. That's why we have to call it out every single day, and that's exactly what we'll keep doing on this show. If you want to support that mission, make sure to hit the subscribe button and leave a like on this video. And if you made it all the way to the end, drop a blue heart in the comments, and until next time, I will see you soon.